Hello and welcome to another video. I have something to add. Yesterday I made a short video about the death of Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis, and if I see these pictures, I think it was a planned death show. The police officers, there were no real police officers. A normal officer would never do such things. But you can see when they brought them out, him, from his car, one of this police officer smiled, so that means that he somehow knew what will come. And then also the man who pushed the knee in his neck, he smiled also. And I asked myself, how is it that there was a camera right in the position to film this, and why are the police officers smiling when they bring them out of the car? And also the victim was well chosen. He was a gentle, unviolent man, like a lamb. So that was for me like a sacrifice of a lamb, and it was well planned. And it was no coincidence. The camera was in the right place. All this, it looks that it was a planned show, a death show, in order to rage the hate of the black people in America. And as I said yesterday, well, there are no differences between white and black people, and I know there are. I know there's a lot of violence against black people in America. Otherwise, there are also crimes that black people do. Well, it is complicated stuff. I live here in Germany, and we don't have such a tension between black and white like in America. I never lived in America. I can't say so much about it, but well, of course there's a guilt, a historical guilt. The European race brought this black Americans to America from Africa, and there were cruel transport. I think 30% of the black people died. They catched in the west of Africa. During the ships went to America, and so there was a lot of guilt the European race had. Especially the start was with Portugal and Spain. Later the English Empire went into this slave business. Well, there's a lot of guilt, historical guilt, and there's a lot of tension. But as I said, the danger is that they use this violent actions now to take away the democracy you still have in America, and then there will be a new state, military government, fascistic state, that they took the rest of your rights away from you. Well, it is also somehow, well, how can I say, the things that Mr. Trump says, that he shows, well, somehow understanding for the rage of the black people, and that he says, well, that these police officers were not police officers. All the other police officers feel upset like him. Well, but Mr. Trump, he increased this rage, this racist mood the years before, and for me it looked like he want to be washed by the lamp. Now the lamp is Mr. Floyd, and but it is not. I think it is not fair, because he did all this race hate the years before, and well, I think he's also guilty because his election, when he became president, his election was made by this race hating against Hispanic people, against black people, all these people in America, and well, I think I hope there will be a way that people somehow don't destroy too much shops, and that America stays like it is now. You know, there are plans that people should go into FEMA camps, that they build up reservoirs for the people, that some areas in America will be wilderness. Well, you should see the films of Deborah Tavares, and it could be that this, what now happened in America, is the start of this plan. Well, think about it. And I have also to add something about this, what I said in my video about Alberto Rivera, this comic about Third Reich. In Germany it is, or in Italy, Spain, Germany, it is called The Godfathers, Alberto Part 3, and I have forgot something to say. There was a concordat signed between Benito Mussolini and the Vatican City that took place in 1929, the same year when the Big Depression started. Well, I think it's no coincidence. There's always a big show when they change laws or doing something important. There's always a big show, and now we have a Corona show. Well, but in this time there was a big depression, and in the same year, 1929, Benito Mussolini signed a concordat between the Italian state and the Vatican City, that the Vatican City become an independent state. And now, if there's something, if people did something wrong, for example, Benedict the 16th, that was Ratzinger, that was a Pope from Germany. He was Pope from 2005 to 2013. He was accused for that he knew about child abuse inside the Catholic Church, and that he didn't react to it. There are also stronger accused. There was a man who accused Mr. Ratzinger for killing children, but that came never into the press, in the main press. Anyway, if they want to bring him to a court, it's not possible. No police can go into this Vatican City to arrest Mr. Ratzinger for the crimes he did, because it's an independent state. And well, there was a movement in Italy. My Italy listeners, they know it. It was this Italian unification movement under Giuseppe Garibaldi, and there was this papal states, and these papal states were conquered by this movement. It was 1861, and in 1870 there was a referendum in Italy how about to bring the papal states into this Italy state, and the vote was to take down the independency of the papal state, also of Vatican City, and so this Vatican state and this Vatican in Rome belonged to the Italian state. And in 1900 1929 they changed it back under Benito Mussolini, and of course this was one of the reasons why the papacy brought Benito Mussolini into power. They did it, and that they become independent state again, like before the time of, well, that was one reason why Benito Mussolini came into power, and they are still independent state, and it would be a first step that maybe the state of Italy would, you know, take away this independency, make a new law, maybe a referendum in Italy, because whatever they do, well, all these proofs are in the Vatican. Alberto Rivera says they have a huge system under the Vatican, all these books, and he called it the nerve center of the Vatican. All these plans are inside this Vatican, and well, the Vatican stands behind all these wars we have in the world, also this chemtrail program that they poisoning the people, the depopulation program. It's all inside this Vatican, all these plans. But nobody can go in because Vatican is an independent state, and it would be a first step that the Italian state would change this concordat from 1929. Well, I go on a little bit with Alberto Rivera. Today I want to talk a little bit about German history, the Holy Roman Empire, the time after Roman Empire went down. Well, that I think it was 313, something like that. I'm not good in history. I think the best thing is I read what Alberto Rivera wrote in this book. It is a part 5. It's called For Horsemen. It's a comic, and I just write the points, the important historical point. How start this Holy Roman Empire? It was overseen by the papacy, and it went long. It was a long time, over 1,000 years, and it is important to understand also for my people here in Germany how the papacy ruled our country. The Holy Roman Empire is somehow the history of Germany. I start on page 11. After Constantine moved to Constantinople, while there was a Roman Caesar, Constantine, he moved to Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, but in this time it was Constantinople. It was about, I just read. Rome was in a turmoil. The bishops of Rome stirred the people to revolt, and then paid off the military generals to step down so that the bishops of Rome could gain control of the empire. The old generals from the Roman Empire and the bishops, the spiritual power was increasing in Rome because the Roman Caesars said, we can't stop this Christian movement, and we declare ourselves as Christians. But they tricked the Christians. They went after the Christians, and then many of them went to this place, the mountains of Turin in the north of Italy. They hide into the Alps. But I go on. The same old crowd with new religious titles, kept control of the gold of the Roman Empire, which had been collected from all lands that had been conquered by the Caesars. Asia, Africa, Asia Minor, that is Turkey now, and India, and deposited in the walls of Rome for safety. So all this gold was in the Vatican. After Constantine's death, these religious Caesars were doing very well. Religion was paying off. After the year 337 after Jesus Christ, they started the push to become the largest land owners in Europe. So they had a lot of lands in Balkan and Spain. Then, to their horror, the tide turned. By the 8th century, Muslim armies were attacking and capturing the Pope's lands in the name of Allah. Well, it's funny, they created Islam, they went to the Islamic tribes, and then the Arab tribes, the Islam fighters, they decided, well, nobody can stop us, we take all the north of Africa, go into Spain, and then they decided, well, we go also to Rome, and there was a negotiation between Franz of Assisi and the Muslim army, and they decided, well, the Arabs get Turkey. This is how the Turkey people came to the Islam. Before that, there was no Islam in Turkey. There were many Christians, Greek Christians, but well, the Muslims got Turkey, and Lebanon, Beirut came to the Roman Catholic Church. I see many fights now there. Well, maybe you understand now why you have all these problems. This decision was made long time before, that Lebanon came under the control of Rome, under the control of the Roman Catholic Church. I go on. The empire was shrinking, only central Italy was left, and the armies of the Lombards prepared to take over what remained of the Roman Catholic estate. Their only hope to survive was Pepin, the king of the Franks. But how could they possibly get him and his army to defend Rome? They needed a clever plan to pull it off. They came up with a wild idea. It was worth the gamble. If King Pepin received a letter from St. Peter up in heaven asking for his help, Pepin just might fall for it. So they forged it, so they wrote a letter. They lettered it in gold on expensive parchment, and they would tell Pepin that the letter was so important that St. Peter himself brought it from heaven and handed it to the Pope. An impressive religious procession came to King Pepin with the letter from St. Peter up in heaven, begging him to save Rome. Pepin was overwhelmed that St. Peter even knew about him. King Pepin believed every word of the phony letter and assembled his armies to defend Rome. Pepin led his army against the barbarians and saved the city of Rome. So the King of France moved to the Rome with his army, and he defeated these Muslim armies. When the battle was over, Pepin gave Pope Stephen II the city of Rome and a limited amount of the surrounding land. The vast fortune of gold and jewels in Rome was saved. When Pepin died, the greedy Pope forged another document in Latin, claiming that Pepin had given the Vatican all of Italy. His successor Charlemagne, in German Karl der Große, so Karl the Big, Charlemagne believed the Pope, and the greatest swindle in history was begun. So it all started with a big swindle. Under Pope Hadrian I, they used another forged document called the Donations of Constantine, which claimed that Constantine had made the popes heir to the entire Roman Empire. Charlemagne believed them. If this document could be believed by Charlemagne, maybe kings and emperors would buy it. The popes declared that they were the successors of St. Peter and that they held the keys to life and death. Well, I show you just a picture. This is a pope with the two keys. One key means the power over all churches, so the spiritual power. The other key means the worldly power, the power over all kings in this Roman Empire. You find these keys still in the flag of the Vatican today. Going on, the kings believed their lie, and fearing the popes, they reluctantly accepted the donations of Constantine. The kings and emperors looked to Rome as the spiritual leader, and they were deceived into believing that the Pope was the head of the kingdom of God on this planet. The Caesars in religious costumes had pulled it off. Well, Caesars in religious costumes, they dressed themselves in white, said we are holy, but they were still in the tradition of the Roman Empire, gaining absolutely power over the earth. So this set up the Holy Roman Empire. And there's a book from Afro Manhattan. It's called The Vatican Billions. This is an interesting book. I didn't read it, but if you want to prove what is said here, well, Alberto Rivera knew it because he had access to this hidden places in the Vatican. This big library. He wrote in another. He wrote that he had access, and he went down there in the night time, and he found out a lot of secrets normally nobody would find out. Well, I think we can trust Alberto Rivera because he regret what he did when he was a Jesuit priest. You know, I was talking about that he destroyed Christian churches in Spain during his time when he was a Jesuit priest, and well, he returned totally to Jesus Christ, and I think we can trust him when he writes this, and it is quite interesting that also this number part 5, it is not in German language, it's only in English language. We can't get it, and all what is said here normally we don't learn at school. Why is this? Well, the Vatican has so much power and money, they can also bring this money into this school book. You know, they influence the school books also, so that we never, it's never written in a normal school book. What is Alberto Rivera saying here? Well, I think that's enough for the moment from Alberto Rivera. And well, I show you how the Holy Roman Empire looked in the Middle Age. It was a huge territory, but it looks like a bazaar. It looks like a bazaar somewhere. Well, I show you a little bit closer. You see all this small duchies or small kingdoms. Well, in that time they called it duchies and counties. The kingdoms came later. So that was about 1200 in the high Middle Age. You see here all these small duchies and counties, and some of them were so small, and well, trading was quite impossible, because every little duchy, or every little well, duchy, or well, how, yeah, you know, they had a small states, and when there was a trading going through this territories, they always had to pay taxes. Well, I want to have this and that, and so that was quite impossible trading or development, and was not good. So the people stayed poor in the Middle Age, and well, this is what the papacy loved. Keep them in poverty, and well, it's divide and emperor cut all this in small pieces, and to have totally control over this small duchies. Well, but how did it start? There was first the kingdom of Franks. It was a huge territory. It was from the Atlantic all over the north, all over the Europe, and there was Charlemagne. He divided his kingdom into 3 parts. It was a contract of Versailles. Well, Versailles, you know, also after the First World War, there was also a contract of Versailles, that Germany has to pay the debts for the First World War. It was in 1918, and this was also the reason why Germany became so poor after the First World War, and this was also the reason why the people loved Adolf Hitler so much, because Adolf Hitler brought them out of poverty. And another thing what is concerns me is this shutdown now. You know, there were SS in the Second World War, and who was the SS? Well, the cruelty of the SS is, can be explained of this time of poverty after 29. Also after the First World War, there were many people poor. There was also violence in the families, like now. Well, I hear also that there are many children are suffering now, and the SS, this young men of SS were this children of this poverty time. Well, so they had no problems to kill other people, because they had in their childhood a lot of cruelty, so they were able to do cruel things, like killing the Jews because they are guilty in their minds. they were guilty in their minds. So they did it with great joy, and also the English soldiers were very upset about the cruelty. So they went with a tank over their own men, and where the English soldier were not used to such cruelty. But it was, you can say, this poverty of Germany after the First World War, and also because of the depression of '28, it was something like a greenhouse of that they breed a cruel generation. And somehow I have the fear, if this shutdown goes on, well, maybe in 10 or 20 years we have also a new generation that kill all the old people or whatever they are told who's the enemy they will kill. So this situation now is very dangerous for our future, because this violence now we have in the family, it will come out 10 or maybe 15 years later, when this young boys, then when they are young men, it can be very dangerous. Well, the SS was that was a well, there was a situation that the young boys in this Weimar Republic and in the 20s, they suffered a lot of violence because of this poverty they had, and well, later they became the SS. Well, I'm going on this here, and well, you know, there is this east part of this Frank kingdom. That was later, it was becoming Germany, and the west part later become the state of France, and the middle somehow disappeared. Now it's well, the middle part became another, well, maybe in Belgium, the Netherlands, some Lothringen. Lothringen is not existing. It's a part of France, and Alsace now it's, well, it is, Alsace is between France and Germany now. It's divided. Well, there were 3 parts, and then later there was a Roman Empire. I showed already, but it is interesting. There was a Pope in Rome, and there was a temporal, a worldly leader. It was called the Caesar of the Holy Roman Empire, and there were royal families, and they had to go to Rome to receive the crown. The Pope was giving them the crown over this Holy Roman Empire. So the Pope decided who rules, which king rules this whole territory of the Roman Holy Empire. But it was not a total control. It was not a nation like France or later England. It was not a tight bound. So the duchies, they had power in their small little duchies, and well, that this Caesar of the Holy Roman Empire, he had more a symbolic meaning, I think. Well, there were several Caesars in this Holy Roman Empire, and there's a funny story. It is about Henry the Fourth. Let me tell me about this. Him. He came from Goslar. Goslar is in the north of now Germany. Well, it's maybe somewhere here. So Goslar was quite important because they had silver mines, and silver was they made money of silver at this time. And Henry the Fourth came from Goslar, and he lived from 1050 to 1106, and he was the story was well known. it's called the walk of Canossa, Canossagang. It took place in 1076. So, and he was opposing the Pope, and then the Pope excommunicated him. So you are excommunicated. So you have no holy spirit now. You are excommunicated, and all the small duchies they were against him, and they said, well, now you are excommunicated. Now your property. Now it's our property. So the Pope was playing these games. He could decide if somebody opposed him. He just spelled this Caesar out, and all the other kings, other duchies, they came over him, taking his property. But this Henry the Fourth was very well. He was very tricky. He went over the Alps, and he wanted to. He was begging for mercy, and he was waiting in the north of Italy, in this Apennines. There was a castle. It was called Canossa, and he went out in the winter, somehow naked or very thin clothes, and he was freezing there for 3 days, begging for mercy. And then the Pope heard his call, and then he was allowed to go to Rome. But it was the Pope Gregor the Seventh, and well, he came to Rome in 1081. This Henry the Fourth, but 3 years later he invaded Rome and beat the Pope, and the Pope Gregor the Seventh, he had to go. He moved him out of Rome, and well, then the next Pope crowned him again, but then later they make a conspiracy against him, and the own son of Henry the Fourth captures his father, Henry the Fourth. So you see, this Rome had a lot of power. Even the own son of Henry the Fourth was turned against his own father, and where they had a lot of money, they had a lot of gold, and this is how it works today. There are always people who like power, like money, like gold, and so they can play this game until today. But it's an interesting story. So also, you know, Bismarck was also against the Jesuits. This old chancellor of that was in this second German Reich. It started, well, it was from 1871 to the end of the First World War. There was a chancellor, Bismarck was a chancellor of Wilhelm II, and it was called the Jesuit War. So he didn't want the Jesuits have property on German territory, because well, he knew that the Jesuits always wanted to get influence into German policy, like they did in whole Europe. Well, this story of infiltration is all over Europe. There were many kings in Europe that expelled the Jesuits. Well, maybe I give you an example. Well, the Jesuit was they were expelled by France in 1764. In Germany, 1772, and then Adam Whitehall was founding his organization Illuminati in Bavaria. That was just 4 years later, in 1776. So they always found a way to get influence and founding secret organizations. Also, these organizations of the Freemasons, they brought under control. Well, and Russia did it 1820. Well, that was also the reason for the Russian Revolution. Lenin took over power 1922, so you can say 100 years after they removed the Tsar family because Russia expelled the Jesuits in 1820. Italy did it 1871, England did it 1829, and Switzerland did it 1848. So all these kings, I forgot Portugal, but that I can't say the date. Many states, rulers, kings expelled the Jesuits because they saw what they did, that they try to gain influence, that they want to control the countries, and the kings didn't like it. So also Bismarck did it later. I think it was in 18, I don't know, it was called the Jesuit War, and there were, in the newspaper, there was a picture that Bismarck was on this castle of Canossa, that also Bismarck has to do with this walk of Canossa again, and later he died, and there are people, they say that Bismarck was poisoned by the Jesuit order. I think it is right. If somebody came up and wants to stop them, so poisoning was a big deal. I mean, they did it hidden, that nobody can prove it. Well, you see, this Jesuit order had a lot attempts to get influence into Europe policy still today, and it is a hidden organization. You don't can only few people write about it, so this is the reason why nobody knows about the thing they do. Well, I go back. Maybe to bring something more fun in this dry story here. I know some people are bored and maybe thinking, how can I do now in this time such talking about these things, Holy Roman Empire. But it is important because in this Holy Roman Empire, the papacy, it was like a training camp for this world power the Jesuit order has now. It was in a smaller scale. It was a treaty now for this one world government. Now they rule the world like they did in the High Middle Age in the Holy Roman Empire. You can say it was a kind of treaty for them. So this is important to understand how it worked. Well, I can also bring some stories about me inside this dry speech here. Well, there were many Caesars who rule the Holy Roman Empire, and one royal family was the family of Stauffen, and this was the site I saw when I visit my grandma. She was living nearby this mountain. It is called the Hohenstaufen, in English the high mountain of Staufen. This castle was now it's not there anymore. There was a castle on the top in the High Middle Age. That was the home of the Stauffen, and they, the Caesars, I think it was centuries in the High Middle Age. They had many Caesars for this Holy Roman Empire, and the people are still proud living here. The Swabians, Schwaben, why they are called Schwaben, Swabians, they came down from Sweden after the Roman Empire. You know, there was a big migration after the Roman Empire came down. Then they came coming the Goths, the West Goths, the East Goths. They went all into the south, where they heard about the crash of the Roman Empire, and then, well, let's go there. Maybe we find luck, we find some gold, and so they were also another reason they came the Huns from the east, from Asia, and they came into this Western Europe, and then there were people who went away from this threat because the Huns were cruel, and so there was a movement from east to west because of the Huns. So the Swedish people, they came here to this area, and this is why this era is called Schwaben. It came from Swabians, and also my blonde hairs from my grandfather. There are many people with blonde hairs here in the southwest of Germany. Well, it's because of the Swedish people, they came into this part of Germany. And I remember that it was such a great thing to go on this mountain. There were many restaurants. You know, I was growing up in the 70s, and you went in. Often these restaurants were called the Lion. You know, the King of Württemberg, he chose the 3 lions for his flag. It's still in this flag of Württemberg. Later, the Kingdom of Württemberg was later. Well, so these restaurants often were called the Eagle or the Lion, and so you went in, and then you got the menu, and then, well, menu, a steak a la Staufen or Hohenstaufen, and so, well, this is a great steak, let's get it. And so they are very proud of this history, because this Staufen, they ruled a long time the Holy Roman Empire, and every time I visited my grandma, well, and then I saw this mountain, and my grandma, wow, today you can see it, and the Hohenstaufen. So they are quite proud of this mountain, but now there's no castle anymore. It was in the Middle Age, now it's gone. But what I want to say, well, in the 17th there were much more restaurants than today. That was a good time. The people had a lot of money, and somehow the shutdowns started earlier, I think. Now we have a big shutdown, but it started in the 80s. In America there was this Reaganomics, and the whole production they took away from us and brought it to Asia and to China. In this area we had a large textile industry. I have towels from the time my parents married, so they are older than me, 50 years, and they are still working. I have still textiles from this time, towels, but when I buy today a towel, after few years I can throw away, because the quality was quite good. This slogan "Made in Germany" was known worldwide. We were known for our quality, good industrial work, and they took it all away from us. And also we had a good black coal in Germany. They shut it down in the, I think it was in the 70s, and now all this coal come now from Australia, also from China. I don't want this coal. There are so many miners in China, they die every year. They have horrible working conditions. so many deaths, miners every year. I don't want this coal with blood on it, and all these products with tears on it. The women in China, they live like slaves. They live in factories, and they live in barracks, and they are not allowed to go out. They can maybe visit their parents 1 or 2 times in a year. They don't see a man. They are in this in areas in this factory areas, and it is somehow like slave work, slavery, and I don't want these products with tears and blood on it. We had an industry here in Germany, but they moved it to China, to Asia, and now we are dependent from this China industry. And well, I want to have back my industry here in Germany, that we are independent from this cruel dictatorship in China. It is a dictatorship. They have no rights. Now they surveil, observe all the people, ship the people, and so now first they destroyed this China country by the British Empire, bring all this opium from India into this country, destroy the old Chinese culture. Then they raised up Mao Zedong, killed millions of people, more than Stalin and Hitler together. Uh, all this old Chinese culture is destroyed, and now they are gaining for Hong Kong. Well, I hope that the Hong Kong fighters hear this now. It is a Jesuit order. They do it. They try to catch now Hong Kong, the last piece of freedom in China, and they destroyed the old Chinese culture. Then now they build it up as a new world power. Now the production in China is higher than in the US, so they have now the highest position of production, and so we are somehow dependent from China now, but I don't want this, and I'm sure that many other people don't want this, and we should think about, after this war, if we win this war, I think so, how we can build up our industry again, that we have our own products, and not these products with blood and tears on it. Well, okay, I going on with, this was the mountain of Hohenstaufen, another important mountain or castle for this, for Rome, for the Pope, or you can say for the Jesuit order, was the castle of Hohenzollern. Well, I show you this castle. It is not far away. When I was small boy, so I think my grandfather made a trip. We went there with his Beetle. He had a Beetle, a small car, and Volkswagen Beetle, and we went there, and he showed me this castle. Also, yes, with my mother later, when he was dead already, we went there, and it is a big castle. It is the castle of the royal family Hohenzollern. It is also on the Swedish Alp. Well, I show you a little bit. Well, the Swedish Alp, it looks like a bank. It was a bank of, there was a sea that was many billion years ago, and so it was a kind of rift when there was a sea in older times of the earth, and now there are many castles, and the town. Well, I must change. It is this. This is the bank, and You see here in the north, it is Stuttgart, the capital of Württemberg, and this town my grandparents lived. It was called Geisling. It is at the border of this mountains, and also on the border there is this castle of Hohenzollern, and it was a trading route where my grandparents lived. It was a trading route from from the Middle Age. You know, there was also a castle. Well, I first go back to this castle Hohenzollern. Well, this castle was important. The royal family of Hohenzollern, the king of Prussia, Frederick II, also known as Frederick the Great, Friedrich der Große, he was quite important. He was from this royal family. He went on the throne of Prussia in 1740, and also the last Caesar we had, William II, he went into the Dutch exile after the revolution of November Revolution in Germany, 1918. There was a revolution, soldiers, workers made a revolution, and so he went to the exile of Netherlands. He was the last Caesar from this royal family called Hohenzollern. But okay, now I go to this. Well, you know, this a town. It was called also the town of Five Valleys. This Geisling. It was on the border of the Schwäbisch Alb, and well, my grandparents they lived there, and well, there was a castle over this town, and it's quite typical that towns developed it beside the castle, so the knives they protected the town, and then started this production. It was before the Industrial Revolution. It started in the Middle Age somehow. There were a castle, and well, the owner was the Duchy of Helfenstein. He had debts, and he was toasted alive. Well, that was a good old time of Middle Age. So he had debts. I don't know who was the one who toasted him, but well, they had a roast, iron roast, and he was toasted over fire because he couldn't pay his debts. Well, the good old Middle Age. There were also other cruel things like the haunting of the witches. You know, there were women. They had spiritual power, and they knew about herbs and healing, and the Roman Catholic Church decided that they are an obstacle for their power, that because the women they could help the people, and so they declared them as witches, and they burned them alive at stake. Well, it was a cruel time, the Middle Age. And well, if you go on this castle, I was there many times as a small boy. I loved this castle, playing there. It was such an adventure to going on this walls and also on this tower, and you looked down into this valley, and so the Helfensteins, or this Duchy of Helfensteins, he looked down the valley, and every time there was a trade company, then he sent out his knives, his soldiers, and well, you have to pay tax. Today is an extra tax. My daughter want to marry, so you have to pay. And there were many people from traders, how you say, salesmen, yeah. There were many salesmen from Dutch. They went to direction Italy, to Venice. You know, Italy had a lot of linen, textiles, and also the glass the mirrors of Venice. That was quite interesting for them, bring them to the north, and so there were many trading companies went to the valley, and you can say it was like, imagine you are in a big town and there's a place you don't know, somebody comes with a car pointing his weapon on you and say, well, give me some money, my tank is empty, I need some more fuel, give me your money, well, I don't want to say this words, but it was somehow like this nice, sometimes they were poor, so the only thing they can have money or goods that they catch this trading companies, and this is what the Pope loves. Keep the people poor, chaos, and that was all in the High Middle Age, before the Industrial Revolution started, and well, I think I must come to an end now. It is somehow long. This was the history somehow of the Roman Empire. I know it's not quite correct, but I mean it's very short, in short words. And later there was the kingdom of Prussia. How was it made? It was also made by the Vatican. Well, I show you some more pictures. This is a castle again in this town, Geisling. And well, then later, Rome decided that they want to have a new player in Germany. So the kingdom of Prussia became larger. This is Prussia, and well, so this is somehow this kingdom of Prussia, and about the time of before the French War. It was after the treatment of the peace treaty of Westphalia, after this Napoleon War. Yeah, the Holy Roman Empire came to an end after the Napoleon Wars. It broke down, and then there was a new kingdom of Prussia. So Frederick the Second, he came onto the throne. First, it was a small piece of land called Brandenburg. It was the area around Berlin, but Berlin was not so big as today. It was only a small village at this time, and it was built up later. So they started with this Königsberg, East Prussia and Brandenburg together, so they had also Schlesien, that is this part, and later they got this Rhine province. That was quite important because there's the coal and also later the steel industry was there. That was important for Prussia to have all these weapons for the First and Second World War. And later it looked like this. So this is also Bavaria and Württemberg. These two kingdoms came to this Prussia, and that was 1871. After Prussia won the war against France, and well, they wanted to have a new player. So before that, France was the dominating force in continental Europe, and after 1871 there was a new power, the Second German Reich, and it broke down in 1918 after the First World War. And well, so you see, well, it worked always that they gave the kings power to rule, to give them territories, and Prussia alone would never had the power to fight against Austria. Habsburg was much stronger. In the beginning, they were defeated by Austrian troops, so Prussia, they were much smaller, and they only could win against Austria because of the help of the Vatican. This is the truth. I know that many people don't like to hear this. They say, well, Prussia, glance and glory of Prussia, but it was given. It was not. They did it not alone. So this royal family of Hohenzollern was controlled by the papacy, and also this man, Frederick II. They made him. He was also the leader of the Freemason in continental Europe. I mean, Europe without England. In England they were also Freemasons, but so he was also the chief of the Freemasons. It is all connected, and well, a funny story is about Frederick II was well, he loved boys. That was quite known, and so what can we do to control this king? Well, bring him some boys. So that is quite amazing. That was he went on the throne 1740, and long time ago, before you had in Washington this Pizzagate. There was also such a thing in Prussia, in Potsdam and Sanssouci. That was a big castle. It was made like the castle in Versailles in France. It's very beautiful. Many tourists go there, and they spoke on this place all France. That was the language of the kings, also the kings of Prussia, because they all looked to Versailles, to France, the big kingdom of France. And well, but it was quite well known that he loved boys, and it's also good to have something how they can blackmail him maybe. He did also good things. He before he came to power, the children had to work on the farms with their families, but he brought this this school system. He founded the compulsory schooling. Every child had to go to school at least for 6 years. The Volksschule, or the school of the people, so that they learned reading and writing. That was quite a good invention. So he did also good things. He brought the potato into Prussia. He was also called the king of potato. So, and that means there was a quite increasing of population in his time. So yeah, you can say that there was a double of the population of Prussia. In 1750 in Germany, the whole population was 12 million, and then in 1800 it was 30 million. But it was also the same in other countries. In France, 1750 population was 20 million, and then 1800 34 million. In England, from 8 to 21 million. It was also because of this potato. It came first from America to Spain. The Spain conquerors brought it to Spain, and in Ireland it went not well. There was a big catastrophe. The potatoes, they went bad, and there was a big hunger in Ireland. Many Irish people went to America because of this disaster of potato. But in Prussia it went well. So there was a big increasing of population. But of course the biggest increase of population was when the industrialization started. It was about 1870 in Germany, in Prussia, so Berlin was growing, and all the other cities worldwide were growing. Well, the industrialization was quite a catastrophe for the papacy, because they saw that this Protestant techniques, it came out from the Reformation, that the people had uh, making inventions, having free speech, and dealing with inventions, have a free spirit. The industrialization in Europe was a product of Reformation, you can say this. It was a quite catastrophe for the papacy, because they lost control, and this is the reason why they brought so many wars over us, and still today. Well, I looked out yesterday and I felt this smell, the mushroom smell in my nose, and then I looked up to the sky, and well, now chemtrailing comes back. Though in this corona crisis it was quite clear air, but when the lockdown is over, gas chamber reopening will reopen, and I can tell you the war is not over. All this corona show, it is it was just to move our minds to it was a theater. The real war is going on. It is not stopping. Well, I think it is enough for today. I will make some more videos. God bless you, and wish you the best.